You know, we really should have gone with the handcuffs, Valerie's sister cackled, unwrapping a small velvet box with a cheap plastic collar inside. Would have matched the HR complaints. Laughter exploded across the table. I sat there, smiling like I was carved from wood. Knife in hand, elbow perched beside my untouched steak. Every person in that dim-lit bistro had once called me a friend, or at least respected me enough to fake it. Now they were wheezing through laughter like I was a sitcom rerun. Because of her. It was supposed to be a quiet retirement dinner. After 26 years in logistics, I'd been encouraged to take early retirement following anonymous tips about unprofessional conduct. No investigation, no defense, just a heavily padded envelope and a bland, "We're restructuring" speech. But tonight they made it clear what the rumors really were. A projector flickered on behind me, and that's when the real carnage began. Fake screenshots. At first, I didn't even recognize them, because none of them were real. Someone had doctored old Slack logs, adding in crude remarks and flirtations that never came from me. A pixelated image of me, slouched with my tie undone, overlaid with a caption, "Let's discuss your package over drinks." That photo had been taken during a potluck when I spilled Diet Coke on my lap. Then came the fake texts, sloppy, poorly formatted, supposedly between me and a female coworker. It was laughable. Except nobody was laughing with me. Only at me. Chuck, my manager, had excused himself around slide 3. Didn't even look at me. Just quietly dabbed his mouth with a napkin and left. Valerie leaned in, reeking of cheap perfume and Chardonnay, and whispered, "Lighten up, Thomas. It's just a joke. They know it's not real." The room didn't seem to. The room had already made up its mind. My fork clinked against the plate. That sound is still lodged somewhere behind my eyes. That, and the slow-building heat under my collar as the walls seemed to tilt. Someone handed me a gift bag. Inside was a pair of novelty boxers with "Retire from Women, too" printed on the waistband. My ears burned. That's the moment I stopped breathing like a husband. You ever feel your soul blink? Like your insides take a step back and leave your body to fend for itself? I didn't say a word. Not when the dessert menus arrived. Not when the waiter asked if I wanted to take home the leftover cake. I just stood up, folded my napkin, and walked out. Left my coat, my wallet, even my phone. That's the night everything died, except the part of me that learned how to wait. And hey, if you're still reading, consider subscribing. Apparently, 97% of people forget to. It helps the team keep digging up stories like this one. Outside, the air was sharp. Not cold, just cutting. I started walking, not because I had a destination, but because staying put meant I'd become something permanent in that room. The joke, the punchline, the "remember that guy?" Not a chance. I didn't go home that night. I didn't go back to work. I didn't call anyone. My name didn't exist anymore. And by the time Valerie finally realized I wasn't sleeping on some friend's couch or moping at a bar somewhere, I was already gone. The next morning, Valerie texted me something insipid, a heart emoji, as if the previous night's grotesque little circus hadn't happened. As if it wasn't her cackling sisters who loaded the PowerPoint with Photoshop and poison, and her who gave the green light. No apology. No explanation. Just a stupid red heart, like that could reattach a severed spinal cord. I stared at the message exactly once before placing the phone face down on the motel nightstand. I'd been there since 2 a.m. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't drink. I just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the coffee machine that blinked like a heart monitor. I'd never understood how quietly revenge starts. Not with fury, but with silence. A heavy, deliberate stillness. By 9 a.m., my phone was powered off and slid under the vending machine in the motel hallway. By 10 a.m., I was standing inside a sterile credit union, closing our joint account. I didn't even take it all. I left $11,248. The exact amount Valerie had spent on a girl's trip to Miami last spring. I kept the rest. My parting gift. The safe deposit box. Emptied. The storage unit. Swept clean. Every bill on autopay was canceled. My name removed from the mortgage. I signed the house over to her, slid the notarized forms into a priority envelope, and dropped it into a USPS bin outside a gas station. No letter. No sticky note. Just the cold legality of a man quietly divorcing his identity. I bought a burner phone with cash. 1 backpack, 2 changes of clothes, and the black watch my father left me. That was it. I disappeared so quietly, It scared even me. Not out of shame, out of precision. Valerie's family assumed I was sulking in a hotel somewhere, nursing bruised ego, maybe watching bad daytime TV, eating takeout straight from the carton, imagining some grand emotional comeback where I'd yell at them in a crowded room and storm out. But see, that kind of performance? That would mean I still cared. I didn't. I calculated. In truth, I had no intention of coming back, not as the man they recognized. I wasn't just walking away from a house, a marriage, or a job. I was erasing a version of myself that allowed them access. A version that thought loyalty meant swallowing disrespect. The last thing I did before leaving the state was change my name. Legally. First name, Thomas. Last name, Halden. My mother's maiden name. Barely remembered at family funerals. It felt like wearing someone else's skin, and I liked how it itched. I booked a long-distance Greyhound under the new name. Sat in the back corner, hood up, headphones in, volume off. Just the rhythm of tires and the rustle of strangers avoiding eye contact. What followed wasn't glamorous. I lived in 2 motels, 1 basement, and a converted tool shed with no plumbing. I scrubbed toilets, washed cars, worked under-the-table shifts hauling crates for a seafood warehouse at 3 a.m. And I did it all while listening, really listening, to people who'd never been invited to PowerPoint humiliation dinners. They taught me more than any manager ever did. Meanwhile, Valerie kept calling. The calls came to the phone I'd left under the vending machine. Must have rung for weeks before the battery died. I imagined her staring at her screen at midnight, angry texting, "Why are you doing this?" between rose gulps, too proud to admit she didn't know who she was without someone to insult. Eventually, I heard from an old friend, one of the few who didn't laugh at the slideshow. He texted me from a new number with a single line. "They're saying you're dead." Good. Let them. At first, Valerie did what Valerie always did, deflect, laugh, roll her eyes and toss her hair like the world was just one long sitcom, and she was the clever one with the best lines. "Oh, he's probably off pouting somewhere," she told her Pilates group. "You know Thomas. Sensitive, like an old cat. He'll come dragging back once he runs out of microwave burritos." Her sisters giggled along, especially Megan, the one with the wine breath and zero conscience. They even posted a meme about it on Facebook. A photoshopped picture of a milk carton with my face on it. "Have you seen this man? Last spotted losing his sense of humor." Hilarious. But by week 3, something shifted. Subtle at first. Valerie called my old job under the guise of just checking in, but HR clammed up the moment she said her name. "We can't discuss Mr. Fairchild's exit details," the rep said. Cold. Formal. "I'm his wife," Valerie replied, laughing like that still held weight. "Ma'am, this line is being recorded." Click. She called again the next day. Got transferred to legal. That's when the word hit her like a brick through a windshield. Defamation. Turns out, my company had quietly begun reviewing the entire mess from that retirement dinner. Not because of me, I was gone, but because Chuck, my manager, had forwarded an internal email with screenshots of the gag slides. HR compared the images to official communication logs. None of it matched. None of the messages existed in their systems. Worse, one of the spoofed emails had metadata, and that metadata traced back to Megan's living room router. Suddenly, Valerie's smug little dinner theater wasn't a joke. It was documented character assassination, broadcast in front of employees, supervisors, and investors. The company was sitting on a potential PR bomb, and their lawyers were preemptively shielding the fallout. Valerie called Megan in a panic. "You said you used a burner." "I did." "Well, then how the hell did they trace it back to you?" "I used my neighbor's Wi-Fi." Megan shouted. "It must have bounced or something." "Jesus Christ," Valerie muttered. Then she did what cowards always do. She tried to reframe the narrative. Claimed I'd agreed to the prank. That I'd even helped plan it, but backed out last minute and threw a tantrum when I realized it didn't land. She floated that version to anyone who'd listen. Her friends, her mom, the neighbors, the guy who walked her dogs. But the cracks were starting to show. Because now people were asking where I was. If it was all just a misunderstanding, why hadn't I filed for unemployment? Why wasn't I cashing pension checks? Why didn't I sue? Why did I vanish like a ghost? And worse, why was she being contacted by a lawyer who sounded anything but friendly? Valerie stopped laughing. Megan stopped answering her phone. Her gym friends noticed she was showing up less, wearing oversized sunglasses inside. Rumor had it she cried during hot yoga and pretended it was just allergies. At brunch, she was quiet, picking at her avocado toast while others whispered. The kicker came when she tried to access our old joint account and discovered my name had vanished from everything, except the mortgage, which she now owned, alone, along with the full tax burden, property insurance, utilities, the roof that needed replacing, the septic system we never fixed. She called the bank. "Ma'am, the property was legally transferred to you. There's nothing more we can do." And finally, it began to dawn on her. The man she'd spent a decade undercutting hadn't just left the room that night. He'd evaporated and taken the oxygen with him. The first PI she hired was one of those ex-cop types, crew cut, leather jacket, name like Doug. He charged her $2,000 up front and promised results in 7 to 10 business days. He came back with a printout of nothing. No activity under my name, no digital paper trail, not even a parking ticket. "Are you sure he didn't off himself?" Doug asked casually, sipping gas station coffee across from her at a diner. Guys like that get embarrassed, blindsided like that. They sometimes check out early. "You looking to recover a body? Or a husband?" Valerie slapped the file shut and walked out. Doug never called back. She hired a second investigator. Younger, sharper, ex-intelligence analyst. He used words like metadata lattice and thermal ghosts. He didn't bother with bank accounts or credit cards. Those were clean. Instead, he pulled traffic camera footage, bus station manifests, even tried facial recognition on government databases. Again, nothing. Whoever he is now, the guy finally told her he planned this. He scrubbed himself, burned his trail. Most people don't even know how to disappear. He trained for it. That's when the panic became real. She started hunting on her own, scouring forums for missing persons, reading obituaries for men in their 50s, watching YouTube videos on how to reverse image search profile pictures. She even made a burner Facebook profile, joined local groups in random states, and started posting fake class reunion photos, hoping someone would comment, "Hey, isn't that Thomas?" Nothing. Then the hallucinations started. Megan swore she saw someone who looked like me at a construction site outside Flagstaff. He was wearing a hard hat and had a limp. He never had a limp. Maybe he faked it, Valerie. I'm just saying, it looked like him. 2 weeks later, their youngest sister Claire insisted she spotted me in Colorado, sitting outside a camper van, flipping burgers in a parking lot. He looked happy. Kind of zen. Zen. Valerie spat. "You think Thomas found peace in a trailer park?" That's when the fighting began. Whispered accusations turned into screaming matches. Claire said Valerie was obsessed. Megan accused Claire of lying for attention. Valerie told them both to go to hell. Their group chat, which once buzzed with memes and middle-aged sarcasm, went dark. Still, Valerie kept searching. She pulled up satellite images of towns in the Midwest, looking for faces in crowds like a lunatic in a thriller. She downloaded apps that alert you when someone from your contacts joins a new platform. Every new account with a blurry profile picture got screen captured and analyzed. She paid for access to property databases in Wyoming, Montana, Kansas. Nothing matched. She even emailed one of my old coworkers, Jeff, from Warehouse Ops. Asked if he'd heard from me. Jeff didn't reply, but she saw the read receipt. It gnawed at her, like termites in drywall. The final straw came when she created a fake Tinder profile, young blonde, just moved to town, in a dozen zip codes I might be hiding in. Swipe after swipe. Painstaking detective work, one bad pun at a time. But there were no matches. Because I didn't exist. Not to her. Not to anyone who knew her. And every day she searched, she realized something worse than the humiliation of being left. She'd become irrelevant to the one person who used to orbit her world. That's when she stopped searching for me and started praying I'd show up. That I'd need something. A signature. $1. A favor. Anything to prove I hadn't really left her behind. But I had. And I was already halfway up a ladder she didn't even know existed. Halden. Thomas Halden. Still didn't feel like my name. But it looked clean on paper. And that was all that mattered. The first job I landed under that alias was at a second-rate janitorial contractor. Cash under the table gigs mostly. Offices, warehouses, startup buildings where the paint was barely dry. I took the night shifts, not because I preferred silence, though I did, but because no one pays attention to the guy pushing a mop at 2 a.m. And that, I learned, was my superpower, invisibility. My first assignment was a scrappy little startup in Pittsburgh. Open floor plan, ping pong table, fridge full of LaCroix. They were developing a logistics AI, ironically. Their whole platform was built to optimize warehouse operations, cut dead weight, automate routing. I knew more about what they were trying to do than half the nerds who worked there. Not because I was smarter, because I'd actually done the job. For 26 years. By the second week, I'd memorized their whiteboards. While wiping down glass doors, I'd watched their engineers argue about load sequences and supply chains. At first, I thought about correcting them. Then I realized, better to show than tell. So I started leaving notes. Little ones, tucked under keyboards, scribbled on the backs of wiped-down checklists. Have you tried staggered routing based on delivery zones? Cuts 13% idle time in urban drops. Your package compression ratio is fighting the pallet model. Consider flipping the logic. At first, no one said anything. Then one night, I noticed my notes were being tacked onto their corkboard. The next week, the engineers stopped wiping off my checklist scribbles. One night, I stayed a bit late. The CEO, skinny kid named Eli, 29, probably never lifted a box in his life, came in early and caught me rearranging their prototype shipping model in dry erase. I froze. Thought I'd get fired. He stared at the board, then back at me. You write this? I nodded. You want a job? I shook my head. Already got one. I'm the janitor. He smirked. You're wasting your brain on toilets. I didn't argue. I just said, you're wasting your servers on bad math. He laughed so hard he spilled his iced coffee. That was the start of it. They brought me in as a consultant, which is code for guy we don't want to admit knows more than us. I worked nights, same as before, but now I had access. A badge. A login. I stayed off payroll. Kept everything through a separate LLC I formed under the radar. Eli and I started meeting twice a week. Not in offices, but over breakfast. He'd bring charts. I'd bring corrections. He listened. That was rare. Dangerous, even. By year 3, the company had its first major investor. I still wore janitor boots to meetings, but I sat at the table. They gave me equity, unofficially, quietly. No photos. No LinkedIn mentions. Just wiring instructions and a contract with more redactions than a CIA file. By year 5, I bought the damn building. Cash. Didn't even tell Eli at first. Just walked into the real estate office in a faded flannel, signed the deed, and made the receptionist blink. I leased the upper floors to his startup for next to nothing. Kept my office on the ground floor, tucked behind a fake supply closet. Still had a mop rack outside the door, just for show. Because here's the secret they never teach you in business school. Power is quiet. It doesn't scream. It doesn't throw dinner parties. It waits. Listens. Bides time. The higher I climbed, the more invisible I became. And I loved it. It started with a LinkedIn post. Valerie had been scrolling on her cracked iPad, secondhand, slow, screen smeared with fingerprints and resentment. She wasn't looking for me. Not directly. She'd long since convinced herself I was gone for good. Dead, maybe. Or worse. Living off-grid with some yoga instructor who wore toe rings and called him Tommy. But that day, she wasn't searching for Thomas Fairchild. She was hate-browsing a woman from her high school who married a dentist and just posted about their 5th rental property. Envy had become her only hobby. That's when the algorithm struck. An industry news article slid into her feed, something about revolutionary logistics optimization and a stealth advisor who helped a no-name startup leapfrog past Amazon's regional model. The headline meant nothing to her. But the photo, that was different. At first, she didn't recognize him. The man in the photo wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her mortgage payment. Not new money flashy, old money silent. Pocket square, cufflinks, posture like stone. His jawline looked sharper, like life had sandblasted every soft edge off him. Salt and pepper hair, not styled, just commanding. But the eyes, those eyes were the same ones that stared at her the night she whispered, "Lighten up, it's just a joke." Her stomach dropped. Something primal seized her spine and twisted. She zoomed in. No name listed. The article referred to him only as the silent partner. But there he was, standing next to a tech CEO, hands in his pockets, half smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked taller, somehow, larger than life. She squinted at the caption, Thomas H. Her breath hitched. Not Fairchild. Not the man she'd mocked with novelty boxers and slide transitions. Holden. She screamed. Loud. So loud the neighbor's dog barked, and someone upstairs banged on the floor. She didn't hear any of it. She was frozen, pupils twitching, fingers trembling. She clicked through the article obsessively, scanning every quote. He wasn't mentioned again. No direct quotes. No interviews. Just whispers. Operates in anonymity. Industry veteran. Reclusive logistics savant. She Googled the startup's name. Nothing concrete. They'd gone out of their way to keep his name off the books. But now she knew. It was him. She ran to her bedroom and tore open the closet, digging for the old wedding album. Pages cracked as she flipped through. There, a photo of him in a rental tuxedo, smiling nervously. Not the man from the article. Not even close. But the bones were the same. The shape. The tilt of the jaw. The eyes. She sat on the floor, gasping. Broke. Alone. Still clinging to a house she couldn't refinance. With a roof that leaked every time it rained and a mailbox full of past due notices. Her sisters barely spoke to her now. Megan had moved to Tampa with a man half her age, and Claire was going through a divorce of her own. And he, the man she reduced to a punchline, was standing in a tailored suit next to a $20 million company, casually erasing his own past. She pulled up her phone and began typing his name into every database she could find. Thomas Halden. No profiles. No photos. No contact info. But the rage had reignited. Not because he was alive. Not because he was successful. Because he had done it without her. Worse, he'd done it because of her. She didn't bother calling ahead. Valerie borrowed her neighbor's car, some dented silver Kia with a dashboard that blinked like a dying Christmas tree, and drove 3 hours straight with nothing but a screenshot and a sick, obsessive drumbeat pounding through her skull. She wore a black blazer that hadn't fit right since 2015 and heels that clicked too loud on the sidewalk. In her purse, a half-empty compact mirror, a stick of gum, and 3 crumpled wedding photos, as if they were credentials. The building was glass and steel, clean lines, cold angles. Modern but discreet, like wealth that didn't need to advertise itself. The kind of place with no names on the door. Just frosted panels and a logo etched in brushed chrome. She stormed up to the entrance like someone who still believed she had rank. A woman who used to throw dinner parties and thought people stayed because they liked her, not because they feared what she'd say when they left. The security guard at the door was polite. Polite in the way armed men are trained to be. Open palm, neutral face, body like a wall. "Ma'am, do you have an appointment?" "I'm here to see Thomas Fairchild." A pause. The guard tapped something into his earpiece. "Ma'am, there's no one by that name in the building." She scoffed. "Don't play dumb. I know he works here. He's behind this company." Another tap, another pause. "Ma'am, are you referring to Mr. Halden?" She blinked. It hit like a slap. Not Thomas. Mr. Halden. That's what they called him now. Not a first name. Not a husband. A title. "Yes," she spat. "Mr. Halden. I'm his wife." The guard's eyebrows didn't move. "Do you have ID?" She fumbled. Opened her phone. Swiped through photo after photo. Thanksgivings, anniversaries, smiling faces now curdled with context. She turned the screen toward him. "That's us. We were married for 12 years. He's not who he pretends to be. I just need 5 minutes." "I'm sorry, ma'am. He doesn't meet walk-ins." "I'm not a walk-in," she snapped. "I'm his goddamn wife." The receptionist inside the glass lobby rose from her desk. Young. Composed. Perfectly tailored business wear, lips pressed into a polite knot. Valerie turned her fire on her instead, marched up to the glass and tapped hard with her knuckle. "He knows me. I'm not some crazy ex. We built a life together. Tell him Valerie is here. Tell him I want closure." The receptionist leaned slightly to the side, speaking into a phone. Nodded. Listened. Then stood. She walked to the door and opened it just enough to lean out. "He's aware you're here, Ms. S." She paused, voice like ice water. "Formerly Fairchild." Valerie's mouth twitched. "He said he's not available," the receptionist continued. "And if you'd like to send communication, you may do so through his counsel." "Counsel?" Valerie hissed. "Are you serious?" The receptionist's eyes dipped to the photos in Valerie's hand. "You should know," she said slowly. "He doesn't go by Thomas anymore." Valerie's chest tightened. "What?" "He goes by Mr. Halden." And with that, the door clicked shut. Valerie stood outside, gripping her phone like a weapon, face reflected in the mirrored glass. Older, cracked, irrelevant. Behind her, The receptionist turned and disappeared down a corridor of polished marble and muted lights, her heels whispering across carpet too expensive to exist in Valerie's world. She waited another 47 minutes on the sidewalk. He never came down. 3 weeks later, just as her obsession began to rot into shame, a heavy envelope arrived. Cream stock, wax seal, gold-embossed letters that shimmered like they were mocking her. No return address. Just her name. Valerie S., formerly married to T. Halden. Her fingers trembled as she tore it open. Inside was a single, folded card. You are cordially invited to the Halden Logistics Shareholder Gala, an evening of reflection, gratitude, and legacy. Black tie. Attendance by invitation only. Guest, Valerie S. Venue, the Belfort Club, 7 p.m. RSVP not required. She read it 5 times. Then again aloud. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a joke. It was bait. Valerie sat frozen on her couch for a solid hour, invitation in her lap, old wedding photos spread around her like crime scene evidence. She hadn't heard his voice in years, hadn't seen him in motion since the day he folded his napkin and vanished. Now he wanted her there. Why? She asked herself that question every day for the next 2 weeks. She called Megan, who drove up from Tampa and brought a dress that didn't fit and opinions that didn't help. Maybe he wants closure, Megan offered, sipping wine from a paper cup. Or maybe he wants revenge, Claire whispered over speakerphone. Valerie laughed, brittle and forced. Revenge? What for? We didn't do anything. Even Megan blinked at that one. They all showed up the night of the gala, but only Valerie stepped inside. She borrowed heels from a neighbor. They pinched her toes so hard she limped through the valet. Her dress was a deep maroon, outdated but passable, hair stiff with product, lipstick slightly off. She kept dabbing at it with a tissue, like makeup could hold her together. The Belfort Club was a glass cathedral for the rich. Crystal chandeliers swayed above a floor of polished stone. Uniformed staff glided between guests with trays of champagne and canapes that looked like edible origami. The air buzzed with money and ambition. She stood in the foyer, surrounded by men in tuxedos and women in gowns that whispered when they moved. Nobody looked at her. Nobody recognized her. Not until the receptionist approached, tablet in hand. Name. She cleared her throat. Valerie S. The woman's eyes scanned the tablet. You're on the list. Mr. Halden has arranged a table for you. Valerie tried not to flinch at the name. Mr. Halden. Not Thomas. Not Tommy. Not honey, babe, or any of the thousands of casual nothings she'd used to flatten him in their years together. She stepped into the ballroom. It was vast, gold, ivory, elegance turned up to 11. A string quartet played something slow and expensive. Waiters offered drinks with discreet, gloved hands. And there he was, across the room, standing beneath a massive arch of glass and steel, framed like the final shot in a movie. He wore a black suit, clean lines, no tie. Just that same stillness, that same calm. Talking to someone with a glass of whiskey in hand, his smile a faint echo, never reaching the eyes. She froze. He hadn't seen her yet. Or maybe he had. Maybe he always saw her before she saw him. She took one breath, shallow and sharp. Megan and Claire texted from the parking lot. You good? She didn't respond. Because for the first time in her life, she didn't know. And then he turned. Saw her. No surprise. No smile. Just a nod. Acknowledgement. A chess master touching a piece he already knew he'd sacrifice. She moved toward him like she was walking into traffic. Slow, disoriented, every nerve unsure if it was supposed to fight or flee. The ballroom seemed to tilt as she crossed it. Faces turning, eyes catching, some polite enough to look away. He stood alone now, swirling the last of his whiskey. No entourage, no arm candy, just presence. The kind of calm that makes powerful people uncomfortable. Thomas, she said, her voice tight, soft. He didn't flinch, just turned slightly, gave her a glance with all the weight of a hammer dropped in a well. It's Halden, he said. She almost laughed, but it caught in her throat. Right. Of course. I had to ask. I had to know. How did you do all this? She gestured with both hands, not to the chandeliers or the tuxedos or the perfect orchestra playing Bach, but to him, the man he'd become. Older, yes, but carved, focused, like whatever pain he carried had been melted down and reforged into something sharp. I mean, she stumbled, after the dinner, The prank, the fallout, all of it. How did you turn it into this? She wasn't smiling now. No sarcasm. No smugness. Just the beginning flickers of something dangerously close to awe. And maybe, regret. He looked at her for a long time. Not cruelly. Not tenderly. Just precisely. You handed me freedom, he said, voice even, like he'd rehearsed it for years. She blinked. What? You think you broke me that night? The truth is, you did me a favor. You burned the last thing holding me back, the need to be liked. The desire to be seen as good. She stepped back slightly, chest rising. It wasn't me, it was a joke. My sister's. You whispered it in my ear. Lighten up, Thomas. You wanted it to land. You wanted the room to laugh. You thought you were the one holding the microphone. He paused. Turns out, you were just pressing record. She swallowed hard. Her hands clutched each other in front of her waist, fingers fidgeting like they were trying to break free from each other. I didn't know it would go that far, she whispered. He smiled. But it wasn't warmth, it was conclusion. That's the thing about public failure. When it happens loud enough, and clean enough, it strips away the rest. People stop expecting you to perform. You get quiet. You get focused. You disappear. His voice dropped lower, enough that only she could hear it. And that's when the real work begins. Tears welled in her eyes, sudden and confusing. You were my husband. You never imagined I'd walk out without needing you to see it. That I'd vanish without a scene. No tantrum. No voicemail. Just gone. That's what scared you, Valerie. He leaned in. Public failure is quiet fuel. Her lips parted, a tiny gasp like a bird trapped in the back of her throat. He straightened, looked past her, back to the party, the glasses clinking, the laughter echoing from people who now treated him like a ghost they prayed would haunt with them, not against them. Valerie's mascara had started to crack. She wasn't begging with words yet, but her eyes had already fallen to their knees. Her hand shot out, desperate, fingers clutching at his sleeve like a lifeline that had already been severed. Please, she choked, mascara streaking down her cheeks, voice thin as wet paper. What made you come back? He paused mid-step, didn't turn all the way, just enough for her to see the side of his face, the cut of his jaw, the stillness behind his eyes. Then came two words. No heat, no pride, just precision. Thank you. And then he walked. Past her. Past the photos she once used like weapons. Past the woman who once wrote his obituary in PowerPoint transitions. Into the ballroom. Into the world. As applause erupted behind the tall glass doors. It was as if the air itself had chosen sides. She stood frozen for a second. Then crumpled to her knees outside the entrance. Heels cracking against the pavement. Arms wrapped around herself like something vital had just been ripped away. The valet didn't approach. No one did. She wasn't part of the guest list anymore. She wasn't part of his story anymore. She was the final footnote in a life that had rewritten itself without asking her permission. You know, sometimes the most brutal revenge isn't dramatic or loud. It's peace. It's the cold, clean silence of someone who no longer needs your permission to move on. And maybe that's the real justice here. Not that he rose, but that he didn't have to explain why.